Welcome to That's Good Sports. I'm Brandon. You can't spell Kaepernick without Perna. My name is in Kaepernick's name. You just got to move the A. There it is. We are one kindred spirit, and kindred spirits share money, Colin. But today I want to talk about the real reason Colin Kaepernick isn't playing in the NFL, and it goes beyond kneeling for the anthem. Don't get me wrong, that's a part of it. But Kaepernick basically decided to protest at the worst possible time for the future of his career. And honestly, if you had to run Chip Kelly's offense, you'd probably be kneeling before the game as well. Now last week, the NFL settled the grievance filed by Colin Kaepernick and safety Eric Reid. Now nobody knows exactly how much the NFL paid out, but it's estimated at anywhere between $1 and $800,000 million. Basically, the same as what I'm learning self-employed health insurance costs. Watching the NFL pay that much money to a safety probably means there was enough evidence there that the NFL would have either lost the lawsuit or been horribly embarrassed as owner emails became public. Emails like Bob Kraft saying Tom Brady is actually kind of lame to hang out with, or Jerry Jones saying he has a hemorrhoid that looks just like Mark Davis. Today, though, I want to talk about all of the football reasons Colin Kaepernick isn't playing in the NFL and see if I can do a Colin Kaepernick episode without pissing half of you off. If I can do that, ESPN has no excuse to blackball me. That's good sports. If you're new here, subscribe. If you're old here, notify button. Also, I'm excited to announce this show is sponsored by Wix, the best place for you to build a website. Please check out my link below in the description to get a website set up at Wix. I built a That's Good Sports page in less than 2 hours, and you don't need to know anything about web design or coding to get a functioning website up in an afternoon. I've already updated my site with my AAF videos, so once you have your site, it's extremely easy to manage and update. If you're a creative, a business owner, blogger, getting married, or just need a site to host Alliance of American Football stats, Wix can help you. Wix walks you through the process, provides endless options for templates to build your site, or they will ask you a few questions and make one for you. Plus, Wix takes care of the boring stuff like hosting custom domains and mailboxes. So if you need a website or hate the one you currently have, check out Wix with my link in the description. Wix. Now you may know by my recent videos, I'm all in on the AAF. And I started thinking about Colin Kaepernick's situation again when I read the Bleacher Report article that said Kaepernick wanted $20 million to play in the Alliance of American Football League. My first reaction was, what a jerk. My second reaction was, well, he'd probably be worth that in terms of the viewing power he'd bring. My third reaction was, what a jerk. This is a league full of guys playing for non-guaranteed 3-year, $250,000 contracts, and you're asking for $20 million? Seemed like a dick move to take away an opportunity from someone who desperately wants another shot to get into the NFL. My fourth, though, and final reaction was, if he played and failed, his collusion case against the NFL would also fail. So $20 million to put the lawsuit at risk is probably fair. That lawsuit has been settled, and my guess is Kaepernick walked away with at least $20 million because it seems a little too coincidental that number was leaked just days before the NFL settled. Now, per Mike Freeman, Kaepernick got a $20 million apparel deal from Nike, plus somewhere between $60 and $80 million from the settlement, depending on what him and Eric Reid split or whatever, which is more than he would have made in 2017 and 2018 in the NFL. Which makes him a better businessman than me. Not by much though, but I can admit I don't make $20 million a lifetime. And knowing him and Eric Reid got paid, feel free to send them my Patreon link. Here's what I think, and I want to explain why I think this. I'm really tired of people using the Kaepernick situation to try and piss other people off, or use it as a simple example to explain a complex situation. First, and most importantly, I do think the NFL gave Kaepernick the screw job. Second, I think Kaepernick fell victim to a football organization who would have done better if a toddler were making decisions rather than Trent Baalke. And thirdly, I think Kaepernick was fine not playing in the NFL once he became the voice and face for a bigger social issue. One thing we hear a lot is, why does player X get a second chance in the NFL, but Kaepernick is still banned? Well, he was suing the NFL. And as much as I hate Roger Goodell and believe most of the owners are driven only by greed, I can't blame them for not actively trying to employ someone suing them. They don't get a pass for the 2017 season by any means, but by 2018, I think it became clear this was bigger than just a player not getting a fair shake to quarterback a team. The 2015 and 16 49ers may have been one of the worst run organizations in all sports, not just football. This is the biggest thing everyone forgets to mention with Colin Kaepernick. The 49ers not single, not double, not triple, but quadruple screwed Colin Kaepernick. First, they get rid of a great head coach in Jim Harbaugh. Then they hire Jim Tomsula because, any coach named Jim will get the job done. I doubt Peyton Manning could have had success with a Jim Tomsula team. Although, Manning did play for Jim Caldwell, so maybe this Jim theory isn't as dumb as I first thought. See that? I'm willing to change opinions as new evidence emerges. Many people don't want to do that with Kaepernick. Tomsula, though, was fired after one season, and then they brilliantly hired Chip Kelly, who was somehow even worse. But the Niners really stuck the landing on the quadruple axle screw job when the Denver Broncos wanted to give Colin Kaepernick a chance in Denver. But San Fran wouldn't work with Elway on Cap's contract to pay part of his guaranteed money, and Kaepernick didn't want to accept less money. And just to be clear, Colin Kaepernick was willing to take a slight pay cut, just not the $16.2 million reduction in salary John Elway offered him. Kaepernick basically had the option to play for the Broncos for $7 million a season, or risk being cut by the 49ers and still make $14.3 million in one season. What offer would you take? In terms of on-field production, in 2015 under Jim Tomsula, Cap went 2-5 through 6 touchdowns to 5 picks with a 59 completion percentage, an average 6.6 yards per attempt to go with 256 yards and 1 touchdown on the ground. The next year in 2016 with Chip Kelly, he was 1-10, same completion percentage, but this time had 16 touchdowns to 4 picks, just 6.8 yards per attempt. Also 468 rushing yards and 2 touchdowns. My question is, do you blame Kaepernick for not playing as well under Jim? The only thing it looks like I've ever memorized is a barbecue menu, Tomsula, or Chip. The only thing faster than my no-huddle offense is my coaching tenure in the NFL, Kelly. Then, there were the things you can't put on Baalke, owners, or Kaepernick that affected 2015 and 16. Linebacker Chris Borland retires at age 24. A guy San Francisco drafted to be their starting linebacker. He was a top rookie who could no longer replace veteran Patrick Willis, who also retired. Pass rusher Aldon Smith gets arrested for a hit and run after serving a 6-game suspension, forcing the 49ers to release him. That's 2 top defensive players, a 7th overall draft pick, a 3rd rounder, gone. And after 14 seasons, defensive lineman Justin Smith retires. So the 49ers defense went to shit pretty fast. But there's nobody on planet Earth more responsible for the downfall of Colin Kaepernick's football career than GM Trent Baalke, former GM for the 49ers. Baalke was the one who couldn't stand that Jim Harbaugh was cock of the walk in San Francisco. Baalke made 2 of the worst coaching hires outside of Hugh Jackson we've seen in the last 10 years, and topped that off with some of the worst free agency moves in 2015 and 2016. It would have been a miracle for any quarterback to have success those 2 seasons in San Francisco, not just Colin Kaepernick. I think that's the biggest thing that gets lost in the Kaepernick discussion. Sure, his play declined those last 2 seasons, and it is possible Kaepernick peaked during the 2012 Super Bowl run. But to say he couldn't have been a successful quarterback somewhere else had he been able to leave the 49ers in 2016 is very short-sighted. Now, some might also say Kaepernick got greedy. He could have played in Denver had he been willing to take a massive pay cut after one bad season, or again if the 49ers would have paid part of his contract. He made $14 million in 2016, which was $3 million less than Matt Stafford, who's been to 0 Super Bowls, Ben Roethlisberger, and $6 million less than Cam Newton, who, like Kaepernick, also lost a Super Bowl. The difference, Kaepernick actually played good this season after losing the big game. So you either believe that Kaepernick was right not to take a pay cut after one bad season under Jim Tomsula, or you believe players all across the league sometimes have to prove they're still worth the investment. But here's the thing, we only criticize players when they demand more money. We demonize them when they demand to be paid what they believe they are worth, but we don't criticize the NFL team owners for their yearly incessant greed, or care when a team cuts a player to save cap space. Nobody gives a shit Roger Goodell is paid more money per year than any player in the league while never risking bodily injury. So if I say Kaepernick got a bit greedy, I have to also say I think it's okay for players to not get paid what the football market says they are worth. After watching how hundreds of NFL contracts pan out in the team's favor over the last 6 years or so here on YouTube covering this shit, I will almost always take the player side. I think it is fair to say he would have worked out far better than Trevor Siemian and Paxton Lynch here in Denver, and maybe the Broncos don't draft Paxton Lynch if the deal between Denver and San Francisco goes through in the first place. I believe that was happening during free agency. Kaepernick might still be in the NFL if John Elway didn't get his quarterback Paxton Lynch in the 2016 NFL draft. Do you see my point about how a bunch of little unrelated things did not work out in Colin's favor? Jim Harbaugh, John Elway, Jim Tomsula, all of that happened before the protest began in the 2016 preseason. And then he was dealt Chip Kelly. Talk about the chips not falling in your favor. Here's what I don't believe. I do not believe that there weren't any head coaches or offensive coordinators who wanted to work with Kaepernick. The coaching arrogance that makes them believe they can fix a player is what keeps them employed. Cap didn't even need major fixing, so I believe plenty of the coaches would have taken chances. The problem, NFL owners were scared their always increasing revenue share wouldn't be enough, and that Kaepernick might decrease the value of their team or the team's personal profits. An unfounded fear based just on history of the NFL. In 2016, the NFL owners' national revenue split earned each team $222.6 million. In 2017, that number rose to $244 million, and in 2018, $255 million. Each team does earn different amounts of revenue from ticket sales, jersey sales, stadium naming rights, whether or not your team makes the playoffs, and of course how drunk your fans like to get. Literally the only reason the Buffalo Bills still have a team. Beer. Missing the playoffs is far more costly to an organization than anyone boycotting the NFL. So the big question, did the NFL collude against Kaepernick? The settlement would suggest so, but I don't know. I can't know that. What I do know is these are quarterbacks who have played since Kaepernick was released. Taylor Hanke, Garrett Gilbert, Derek Anderson, Nathan Peterman, TJ Yates, Matt Castle, Scott Tolzien, David Fales, Jeff Driscoll, Mark Sanchez, Josh Johnson, Matt Schaub, Geno Smith. In fairness, Cap may have needed to accept a backup role and a backup salary for some teams to take him. A team like the Seahawks, where he worked out and would have fit in with the progressive city and organization. Plus, Russell Wilson never gets hurt, so why would he go to Seattle? The sad thing here is if you're a football fan, if you really appreciate the game, you got robbed of watching a great athlete possibly play through what could have been the prime of his career. If he would have hung on for the Kyle Shanahan era, I really think we'd be watching him play some of his best football right now. Plus, the 49ers would have never traded for Jimmy Garoppolo, and Bill Belichick would have started Jimmy G when Brady cut his hand in the playoffs, and Tom would have been traded after Garoppolo beat Big Dick Nick in Super Bowl 52, and the Rams then would have won Super Bowl 53, and really the world would be a better place right now. I do think if Colin Kaepernick really wanted to be playing football in the NFL, that would have happened by now. He would have had to play for less than what he was worth, but technically, if being on the field was the most important thing to him, I think that could have happened. I also think there were some owners and GMs who didn't want him on their team no matter how little he would have played for, which is messed up. And it's why they are even more responsible for Kaepernick not being in the league than he is. The biggest factor, though, may have actually been the intangibles. If Jim Harbaugh stayed in San Francisco, if Jed York fired Trent Baalke, or Baalke and Harbaugh could have capped their pissing contest, pun intended, Kaepernick would still be in the NFL, regardless of the protest. To me, Kaepernick was an above-average QB with elite athletic ability who needed to be in the right circumstances to succeed, much like, say, Nick Foles, minus the elite athletic ability. Once those circumstances went to hell, his play declined like it would have done for a majority of the quarterbacks in the league. Colin, by not playing, weirdly, now has had a bigger opportunity to make money and put said money to use and advocate for social change, which I applaud because personally, I'm jaded. And I believe social change won't happen until Jose Canseco actually convinces the US government to admit aliens can save us via time traveling. I cannot stop reading his Twitter feed. I also don't feel bad for Kaepernick, and that was true before the settlement. He will never have to worry about money, unless he's really bad with it. He's become an instrumental figure in something bigger than football, a game, and in 30 years his body will thank him for exiting the NFL early. Rarely are big problems originated because of one thing, and just like that in this situation, it was not one thing that caused everything to spiral into where we now exist when you say NFL and Colin Kaepernick. Now, he could technically maybe return depending on what was agreed upon in the settlement, but if I'm him, I'd double down on doing good in the world and buy an AAF franchise in Napa Valley and get drunk on wine every single day. You can be a drunk if you give a lot of money to charity. And once a year, I'd go out and play a quarter for my AAF Napa team, the Winos. Thanks for watching another episode of That's Good Sports. Please subscribe here on YouTube. I'm on Twitter, Instagram. You can follow me there. At Wilkie6 does help me write football episodes, so he's a good Twitter follow. A lot of good Wilkie's Twitter jokes out there. If you haven't done so, do it. Big thanks to Wix for sponsoring this episode.